So, hello to our guest and anybody else who's going to be watching this afterwards. My name is Aileen Boyle. I run an organisation called Fortro Limited. I'm also an associate for Ahead Business Consulting. I've put down there 3 job titles because, like most one-person bands, I am many things. I am an entrepreneur because I have started my own business. I run my own business, and I am always looking for how I can get involved in exciting projects and take those forward. I am a strategist because without a good plan, without a good strategy, you don't get very far. And actually, that is my key skill, and it's what I bring to a lot of my customers, my clients. And growth advisor, we plan it, we figure out the major priorities, and then we actually have to figure out how we're going to do it. So I'm quite tactical in my approach as well. The biggest thing that I bring to my clients is I do think about things slightly differently, and I understand what it's like to be in the hot chair of running your own business. So I do feel that that allows me for a greater understanding, and my clients do say that that's something that goes forward. So that's me in a nutshell. Do feel free to stalk me on LinkedIn if you want to find out a little bit more. So today's session, I've called it Moving On Up. It's been a really tough old 5 months since we went into lockdown. I appreciate that north and south of the border have been dealing with that slightly differently, and those challenges continue on. For many businesses, if you happen to be an anything, you will have found that you actually flourished. If you were client facing, relied on the face-to-face, you will find that you had just the biggest challenge you've ever faced in your life. And trying to keep your business going in that was extremely challenging and very, very difficult. So like everything, there's been much learning, and hopefully the conversation that Sarah and I are going to have today will bring some of that learning out. The first thing that would be really helpful for you and for anybody watching, and perhaps for the conversation, is there have been many things that really do stop us in our tracks, but I wonder, what is your biggest hairball? Now, what I mean by that is, what is the thing that is the biggest thing that's actually stopping your business going forward? If I share my example, for me, I actually started Fortro in January, which in hindsight was not necessarily the best move. However, and so when lockdown came, I had to rethink how I delivered what I do. So that was my biggest hairball: delivery. Not what it was I was going to do or how or why I was doing it, but how was I going to deliver this? So I just wonder what everybody else's hairball was. Sarah, what was one of the biggest things for Bid for Success?
The main issue that we had was kind of a knock-on effect from what was happening for our clients. Many of our clients work in construction and that kind of thing. And obviously, as of March 23rd, that all ground to a halt. There was, none of that was happening. And which meant that all the bids that were currently active kind of also got put on hold because nobody knew what was going to happen. So all of that was put on hold, and we had a few weeks, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks of this real uncertainty where the procurers just weren't ready to commit to what was going to happen going forwards. Quite understandably, because, like I say, at that point nobody really knew what was going to happen. And so we had that period where we had no pipeline. All the work that we should have been doing had been put on hold, and all the projects that we were looking at to be working on had also been put on hold. And so we kind of, obviously that's your, oh gosh darn it moment, as soon as we're being polite, of sitting there and thinking, right, so what do we do now? And that was where we were, I think, was if we can't do what we would normally do, what are we going to do? And I think maybe an important decision that we made as a company was, how can we serve the businesses that we work with during this period, even if we can't literally be doing work for them, so what can we do to make the best use of this gift of time that we've been given to better serve people going forwards. And so, you know, that was effectively what we used that time for.
Yeah, so very similarly, so although we're coming at it from slightly different approach, different businesses, actually that was one of the biggest things I looked at as well, which is my favourite question is, well, if this isn't possible, then what is?
Yeah.
So hopefully those that are watching have that idea, they have that thing that is just feels like they're stopping them going forward. And the reason I bring that up is actually, if you can nail that, then you're actually able to start thinking ahead about your business. What we have there is, you know, what really, really anchored me, and I'm not sure if it did for you, Sarah, was my vision for my company, my purpose, my why, my whatever it was that you want to call it.
Yeah.
That anchored me in everything that I did, because what it did was it brought real focus into how I thought about my clients. It allowed me to look at how I deliver. Because what we're finding now, and what I find, is that for many businesses, there's a couple of words. Pivot was a favourite word that got bandied around.
Yes, there's a lot of pivoting.
Yes, for me, pivot is literally where you just are here and you move to there. What I was finding was that most of my clients actually had to morph their businesses, because while their vision held true, while their purpose held true, just about everything else fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
So they had to rethink their business. And I just wondered if you had an example of one of your clients, obviously remaining nameless, where somebody had to really think ahead and really morph their business.
Yeah, I mean, anything that was delivered face to face had to have a big rethink. I mean, obviously for our construction clients, they've had to completely rethink about the way they deliver their projects, because they've had to consider the 2 meter rule and all that kind of thing going on. But we also work, for example, with training companies who would normally have been delivering that training face to face, but obviously in a good way. And I think this has happened at the right time in some ways, because we have the technology, because the remote work movement has been building for a number of years. We have the tools to be able to work together, even if we are separated physically. And we've all got used to doing things by Zoom. And I know our training providers looked at, okay, so we can't go into a venue, but now we can offer online training through Zoom, that kind of thing. It was like you say, it isn't necessarily, for some of them it's a pivot, for others it is, like you say, it's a morph. It's changing the way that they deliver things. But yeah, I mean, I think, as I say, technology is on our side. Before working for Bid for Success, I was a copywriter for a remote technical recruitment agency for a number of years. So sort of appreciating all the collaboration tools that there are out there to help businesses to deliver online, when we are really in a great position in that respect. Although the virus hasn't done anybody any favours, had it happened 5 years ago, it probably would have had even more of an impact than it's had now. Yeah. Whereas now at least we do have, webcams and Zoom and Microsoft Teams and, things like that allow people to collaborate across distance.
Yeah, my very first client when I was started up for Tro signed on the dotted line on the 19th of March, and I delivered my first strategy workshop on the 25th of March with Zoom. And anybody that's been through a strategy or a brainstorming session in their business know there's usually a lot of flip chart paper, post-it pads and highlighters. And my guilty pleasure is in fact stationery. And so to not have those things, or just to have them with me, meant that I actually not only had to think ahead, but I actually had to think completely differently. And so what I'm finding is that while making that point, while my vision was my anchor, where I had to change was the delivery and match how I could best meet my clients' needs, who at that time hadn't really had time to change. They were looking for a strategy workshop, and I had to figure out how I was going to deliver that in this session, having never used Zoom before in my life. So that was a real challenge.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was just move on, because as we said, people have had to really, really rethink their business. And these are the things that I have found keep people on quite a good pathway. So I mean these with, you know, in the spirit that they're meant. Many businesses, some of them are new, some of them have been around a long time. I think you made a really great point. It actually gave us a jolt and, you know, gave us the time. Although it didn't feel like a blessing at the time, what it has allowed for many businesses is to actually stop and say, why are we here? What are we doing this for? Do we still want to do it? Is this an opportunity to completely change things? I've been thinking I wanted to change things anyway. Or like you say, for many, when they're client facing, restaurants, hotels, that sort of thing, they just had to stop. What else could they do? And what it allowed for was we had to simplify things because we had to go through the finances, through the resources, through the operations to figure out what we had left and what was still usable. So simplifying your business is one of the best and easiest things that you can do going forward. And what I found was that gave the managers, the founder owners and founder managers and even just business leaders a chance to think, actually, I want to do this differently. I'm either going to change my product or I'm going to change the delivery. Once they had figured that out, then they could sit down and strategize. They could figure out, what is my number one priority? Well, that's to stay in business. But it was amazing how many people didn't actually write that down.
Yeah.
When you write it down, it's amazing how then your brain filters for that particular priority and everything else takes a close second. Because what it does is it means that anything that comes up, you then go, is this on strategy? Will this keep me in business? Is this in line with my overall purpose of my business? Will this be something that my team can deliver if you are working with a team? Is this something that my business partner will agree with? And so what it does is, again, it's a sort of the second anchor. The third anchor, so a first anchor is your why, your second one is the how, and the third one for me is actually finance. I know people were expecting the what, but actually finance. So once you start to review your finances, it can highlight perhaps where there was some money going where it shouldn't have. It can also highlight where you're going to need that money and where to spend it. And then obviously we all did it at the time, which was, what could we have? What support can we get? And again, I know there was slight differences north and south of the border. I'm based up in Scotland. If you're like me and you just started in January, nothing. The answer was nothing, because we fell through the cracks on absolutely everything. If you were an owner who took dividends but not salary, there was nothing, because it was salaried people that could be furloughed. And I did actually hear of a company where the MD furloughed themselves and kept the rest of the staff working. That was an interesting one. Not quite sure where the strategy was in that. But finances obviously were key.
Yeah.
Strategizing, what could you do? And that then put paid to people saying, well, if I can continue, if I can stay, who can I continue with? So it allowed people to think could I set up a strategic alliance? So you and I, Sarah, are working together on this particular presentation. We dovetail quite nicely together. Collaboration has been a huge part of strategies, because it allows people to say, well, you do A, I do B, and together we can create C. Or actually, I do a bit of A and do lots of B. You do lots of A and a little bit of B. So why again don't we join together and we'll actually create something more strong and more powerful for our clients?
Yeah.
So what I've found is that there's even been competitors joining to come to the market and say, actually, we're still here. And the other side of that is, if your competitors don't survive, then the clients actually need an alternative. And it's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. And why shouldn't it be you being there?
Yeah.
So there's lots of things to do there. Future proofing, again, is where people just then turned around and said, well, what can I do that will allow me to continue on? And that's where some of the really great ideas came out. And I'd like to talk about that in a little bit more detail, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So when we're talking about future proofing, and the name of this subject today is kind of moving on up, moving on forwards, resilience, you know, people talk an awful lot about resilience, and I'm talking about business resilience as well as founder resilience. For businesses to survive, they need to be robust, but what they need to do is be resilient. And what I mean by that is the purpose of falling over is to figure out how to get back up again. And when you figure out how to get back up again, you create a resilience in your business. The owner sets the tone, so they must also be exhibiting their resilience. Yeah. And the things against that could be things like, well, they maybe run a very command and control situation. They're going to have to rethink that, because if you've got a team, that's where your resilience is going to come from. And also you need to spread the knowledge. Your clients want to know that you are resilient. They need to know that you're still got creditworthiness, that you're still going to be there. So yeah. That's where you can build resilience within your client services department. Your suppliers need to know that you're still going to be buying. So one of the ways to create resilience is to perhaps partner up with one of your suppliers and join forces and actually complement each other going forward. A couple of organisations I know up in Scotland, they were catering, and what they did was, rather than close their kitchens, they started producing the food for food boxes that would then went out to those that were in need, whether it was missions, whether it was the Salvation Army, etc. And that, because they had the kitchens and the food was there, and so what happened is the organisation took the food to them and said, can you cook it for us, because their supplier wasn't able to get their food up. So there was some really great stuff there, and what that does is really creates that resilience. It creates that people resilience, the financial resilience, and the business resilience.
Yeah.
But you have to be using that energy wisely when you're putting it in. I have come across many people, many businesses many owners that are starting to burn the candle, shall we say. So you really don't want to be burning out. And it is tough, this juggle. You know, say I was just interested to know if any of your clients have talked about this juggle and what they're doing about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in as much we've handled that ourselves as well, and it is that question of I think we took a pause, and for the first few weeks of lockdown, we were talking to each other daily just to kind of check in and to see where everybody was, and we realised that this time had given us an opportunity to do something that we'd been wanting to do for a really long time anyway, and B, would be really useful. But just by, I think, taking that pause to stop and to think about the knock-on impacts of what this was going to be having to our market. And so we work primarily with small and medium enterprises, or SMEs. About 90% of our clients are SMEs, and we realized those businesses were going to be the most vulnerable in this. You know, small businesses tremendously vulnerable to fluctuations like this. And for a long time we've been wanting to develop our training program to support more small businesses into bidding. And having this time, this pause, enabled us to create that, you know, and whilst it wasn't earning us money per se, because you know, nobody was paying us for it at the time, it was a good use of the time.
Yeah.
You know, and if we hadn't been focusing on that, and I think for us it was also having something positive to focus on. You know, so you've found a project that you can work on, and over that time we were advocating to our clients to do things like go through your bid library and update it, you know, while you've got this time, and make sure all your certifications are in order, and if they're not, find out what you need to do to get them renewed, you know. Don't just kind of panic and throw your hands up in the air. Try and, as you said, think strategically of like, what can we do with this time? What would be a good use of this time to improve our service when somebody presses the magic button and everything goes back to normal? I mean, we might still be waiting for that to a certain extent, but
well, That's an interesting thing, because actually I'm more and more having conversations with my clients about this is normal now.
Yeah.
Because 5 months in, where we thought it was only going to last 3 weeks,
Yeah.
actually here we are 5 months later, and it shows no sign of changing drastically for the next few months. And I guess that must, for some business owners, bring a real sense of fear, trepidation, worry. For some it brings a real excitement and opportunity, because it depends what your business is.
Yeah.
But I do know that, you know, it's been quite paralyzing over the last few months for a lot of people. You know, that sort of, if it's not a fear around making the wrong decision, it's a fear about missing out on a business opportunity.
Yeah.
I call about, people talk about FOMO, but I came up with the FOMBO, fear of missing out on a business opportunity. And, you know, it really is that, you know, and there's lots of shiny things out there going, oh, they're shiny, oh, they're shiny. That's opportunities.
Yes.
And it's about, how do you take up those opportunities? And one of my answers to that is, think of your anchors.
Yeah.
Think of your strategy, think of your purpose. That's an anchor. And think of your money. That's a really good anchor.
Yeah.
And if you think about those, you are actually able to use that energy that you have wisely, so that where you are spending your time is in fact on the right thing for your business, which should lead to even more opportunity.
Yeah.
When I say opportunity, I'm not talking about the millions come running in. I mean just about, there's a piece of work there which leads to another piece of work, and slowly you then start to realize you know, for your business to go forward.
Yes.
But again, it's very sector specific. So I'm talking very generally here, but I'm not sure what businesses we have here, and I'm sure some of them will be sitting there, but that's not relevant to me. And what I would say to them is that, again, if you just think of it from an anchor yourself, is this opportunity right for my business or not? Is it right for my team or not? Will it get us further down the line? And most importantly, will it put money in the bank?
Yeah.
And what I've also found is many businesses have really looked at their processes, and where they have a delivery model where they're perhaps in the travel industry, sort of private travel, or whether it's experiences, whether it's business workshops, they've following through, you know, from the shiny to getting the money in the bank, as it were, prospect, you know, suspect, prospect, discovery, and then client. They're now saying, when you're a client, you're only a client once you sign and pay me a deposit. Because then there's skin in the game. Now, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it's a little bit. Again, it's about the company that you run and the business you're in, whether or not that's relevant.
Yes.
So they're just operationally, they're changing things up.
Yeah, and this is where for us, we see a lot of opportunities for businesses now who haven't thought about bids and tenders as their way of going forward, to find them now. Because, I mean, the government has this target of spending £1 in every 3 with small and medium enterprises, which they're falling short of. It was supposed to be £1 in every 3 by 2020, and we're still at £1 in every 4. The government wants to be spending money with small and medium enterprises, and I would imagine, kind of as a post-COVID thing, that will continue. Then when you're looking at public sector clients, they're stable financially. They're not going to go bankrupt. They're not going to be impacted by COVID in the same way. And they have a payment code, a prompt payment code. So they have to pay their suppliers within 30 days. So if you can supply to the public sector, even if you haven't thought of it before, there are those opportunities available. And we do have, if anybody is interested in finding out how to do that, you can go to, we've got a channel on YouTube, and we actually have a video which talks them through the process of how to go to a portal and to see if there are any opportunities available there. But I mean, again, that's that thing of using your energy wisely, taking this time to investigate possible new opportunities like that, which may help to carry you through this.
Yeah, good point, well made there. And, you know, are there sort of some central online portals where people can find the opportunities for those to you know, or frameworks that they can join in? Yeah,
and the central portal is the government's one, which is called Contracts Finder. So if they Google Government Contracts Finder, that will be the first result that pops up. And then there are regional portals as well. So Scotland has its own, which, forgive me, I can't remember the name of offhand.
Public Contract Scotland.
There we go, thank you. I knew it was something like really to the point. And Wales has
We don't mess around.
No. Exactly. And then basically, if you can think of an organisation that your company might supply. So, for example, if you're a catering company, you think, well, we might be able to do school dinners, or we might be able to do the hospital. Go to that organisation and search their website for procurement, and they will tell you where they issue their procurements to. So pretty much everything should end up on Contracts Finder. If they're lower value, they may be on a more local portal, or they can just drop us a line and we'll try and give them a steer to the right place.
Yeah. So in Scotland, we have the Public Contract Scotland, as we mean, but we've also got what's called quick quotes, because as you know, there are certain levels about whether it goes on to which portal. Yeah. And for anything that's under £9,000, it's on quick quotes.
Okay.
And anything over 9 has to go onto Public Contract Scotland. Yeah. So, but I'm sure, you know, and as you say, there'll be some local variations as well, where you are, and it's always good to figure out where that is. And I imagine that's also another great opportunity to buddy up with another business. Yes. So if you look at it and you go, well, I could do that bit, but I can't do that bit. I know I guess that's where that collaboration piece comes in that I was mentioning. If you could create a collective, you know, collaboration sounds quite 50-50, but actually if you have a collective or a co-opetition, as we say, where usually it would be competitors, but they get together and then, you know, as long as you're all contributing at some point, look, there's a lot of C words in there, contributing to the contract, then everything is, you know, then it creates more opportunity for everybody to join in. Have you any experience of that?
There are sort of multiple ways that you can get involved in bidding, if you don't want to kind of bid outright yourself as the primary contractor. You could be a subcontractor to a primary contractor. So if you can supply part of the service, for example, in construction, you might have somebody who's a specialist asbestos person. They would generally subcontract for the main contractor and get called in when asbestos was an issue. Or, you know, if you know somebody, if you supply ready-made sauces and you know who the catering supplier is for the local hospital, you go in as their supplier. So there's that route. Then there is, when you're a named subcontractor, then that helps you to kind of take the next step up when you're ready. Mm-hmm. There are also joint ventures. So that's where a group of contractors can come together and say, we can't do it individually, but between us, we can do this. And that obviously has to be worked out between the businesses, but it's a perfectly possible way to get in and to access bids and tenders that way.
Brilliant. I wanted to bring up the topic of continuity, business continuity, contingency planning, etc. I think it's really relevant now because having been through these last 5 months, it's made a lot of businesses stop and think, well, I got through it. For some, unfortunately, they didn't get through it and they've unfortunately had to fold, and that must just be heartbreaking for those business owners. For some of us, we have gotten through it, but and yes, we absolutely embraced if this is not possible, then what is? But if you think back to my first bit, you know, that sort of thinking ahead, thinking differently, could we, I guess the next question is, could we and would we survive another financial economic crisis?
Yeah.
So while during lockdown, I was doing a lot of work with my businesses, reviewing their operations, reviewing their business, just to help them stay in business. And then as lockdown came out, it was helping them move forward again. Yeah. What I'm finding now, the topic of conversation is continuity or contingency. Yeah. And we're sitting down and saying, well, what happens if me as the business owner gets COVID? And there's two versions of that. There's mild, where you're self-isolating, you're ill for 3 or 4 days and you recover and you work from home and you follow the guidelines. or there's the one where you end up in hospital. What happens to my business? What happens if I lose a senior member of staff? Whether it's, you know, whether it's through illness or in fact because of the way the employment market is, they may feel that they wish to move on. What happens if my customers decide to choose one of my competitors? What happens if I don't have what my clients need? What happens if, how much money do I actually have to survive? Is it 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? Very few companies have 12 months worth of money to keep going, and even less so now. So I'm finding an awful lot of the conversation now is about that contingency, about continuity, and during those sessions we just sit down and we come up with the scenarios and we think about, like, what would be the process you follow and how do you mitigate those risks. That's a really helpful thing to do, and to draw on the last 5 months of how you as a business owner dealt with the last 5 months and what might be there and what might not be there. It's really helpful to have that in place and have it in a place where every member of staff can see it. The other thing we're finding is, you know, and that's, you know, that's on top of the, is your IT system robust and what happens if it goes down? How are you dealing with your data? You know, what if your landlord suddenly turns around and goes, I'm sorry, but I need you to leave? So that's on top of the normal, what I'd say normal, what was business continuity of long ago. There's other situations in there. So I think it's worth maybe just spending a few minutes talking about that. How did Bid for Success think about contingency and continuity in the last 5 months?
Like you say, it's something that's been important to us both for our own business and also for our clients. For us, we used the resources that were available to us in terms of putting some people on furlough, keeping some people working, and finding that balance of making sure that we could do the work that we had, but without putting ourselves at financial risk and without, you know, going too far the other way, kind of thing. And we navigated through that. Then looking forwards, what we're trying to do now is to build up an associate pool. So we've got the flexion either way going forwards. We've been very lucky that all those bids that were put on hold during that period have now come back to, or for the most part have come back to life, in addition to all the things that would normally be coming up at this time of year. So we're currently experiencing a nice busy period. Procurement's actually quite busy. So we're in that process of thinking about growth, but obviously having to think about that growth carefully, because like you say, what happens if we go into lockdown again and everything gets put on hold? So that's why we're going through the associate model for our growth rather than you know, recruiting new people, because we can't guarantee that we're going to be able to keep those jobs. And in terms of procurement, the way companies have responded to this pandemic and how they will operate going forward, it's become another risk that needs to be accounted for and mitigated in the bids. So those questions are coming up, you know, like, how did you maintain your business throughout that period? How stable are you now? You know, there are those extra questions around that. And what would happen if there was another lockdown? You know, how would that impact the service? So, you know, we're having to work through that with a lot of our clients and to think through that process in a similar way to that you are.
Yeah, great. So I guess one of the big things that we have to think about moving forward with our business is these C questions. You know, what is it that your customer wants? What is it that your customer needs? And what can you offer? I mentioned this earlier on. And if you created a lovely Venn diagram, then the answer is the bit in the middle. Customers are changing quite drastically. So you may have a product that is absolutely useful, that is a great idea, but actually if your customers don't need it or want it, then it's just an idea. And this is going back again to one of those anchors right at the start, and will in fact inform your commercial decisions. It will inform your marketing programs, it will inform who you employ, it will inform where you put your energy in your business. Because actually, without your customer, you don't have a business. So I talk a lot with my clients about reverse engineering, where it's actually we start with the client. For strategy, I start with the end. Where do you want to be? What kind of business do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? And is that an exit, or is that you want to keep it for 20 years?
Yeah.
When we're talking about the client, it's put yourself in the client's shoes. It's, you know, it's great to come up with an idea about, oh, what do I want to do when I grow up? I want to do this and I want to do that. But if there is no market for it, you're going to come a cropper, as they say, where I come from.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. And actually, it is no fault of yours or anybody's. It's just that actually the market doesn't want it and it doesn't need it. Yeah. So look, what I would say to most businesses is look in your toolbox to see what there is. Lift your head and look to see what the market is doing. And if there's a chink or a gap in the market, move in. Quickly. Move with agility, and I mean that, you know, morph to how you need to be, because if it's important for you to have a business and you find the gap, then I say take it. If you have a business where your particular product is no longer needed or wanted, then you need to come up with something else. And that if that means you start a new business, absolutely. If it means you can take you know, it may be that you did this much of product A and only this much of product B, but actually everybody wants product B now, so swap them over. You know, look at your customers, look at the market, and it's maybe worth doing a little bit of research around that, and matching that up with what you can offer. I imagine that your clients will have done something similar, Sarah.
And again, you know, we did this ourselves, and kind of talking about what you were saying of like, for us, it's very important that our customers stay in business, you know, because if they're not there, we're not here. You know, our success is tied to our customers in a very real and direct way. And so that was why a lot of our thinking was, what do our customers need right now? And that was why we developed the training programs while we were down, to help support them. Even if they couldn't right now afford to come to us and bid, at least we can support them in doing that for themselves right now. And then when things pick back up again, they'll hopefully remember who helped them. You know, and so it's that kind of thing of I think when there are these big society-wide events, you can't think of yourself as an individual. You have to think of yourself as that piece in the whole puzzle, and think about how everything works, not just yourself. Absolutely.
So I've kind of just summarized this of what we've talked about. So we've talked about thinking ahead, thinking differently about your business. We talked about simplifying down what you have, strategizing, and then future-proofing your business. We've talked about continuity. Embrace change I didn't have as a tag, but actually that's ultimately what we're talking about here. Embrace it. You know, you don't have to like it, but you should embrace it in the sense of that's the way things are going forward. And by embracing it, I mean, you know, what is your business going to do? How will it change to that? What are your customers' changing needs? And lastly, and most importantly, as business owners, we must use our energy wisely, because if we set the tone for the rest of the business. We are leaders of that business. We're not just the manager of that business. And people look towards us, whether it's like myself, I'm a one-woman band. My clients look towards me for guidance. Your clients look towards you for guidance. Your customers look towards you. Your people that you work with look towards you. So you set the tone. So making sure that you look after yourself and your team and your clients, customers, is incredibly important to make everybody feel safe and make them know that you are actually on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well,
do you have any other questions for me? I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
It was great. Yeah, I could talk to you for hours. So let me just have a look. I've managed to unmute the other version that I've got going. We don't have any questions from anybody at the moment on Facebook, but I did have a question that came in earlier, and I think it was kind of somebody just trying to get an idea of how does this play out, so like a scenario based. So do you have a scenario where you've worked with somebody and you've been able to support them through this process that you've just described?
Yes, and in fact, the clients that I have just now, yes, this is quite prevalent. Usually, you come across your clients in various things, and for me, it's usually a conversation, and I just say, well, can I help? And they say, well, help, how can we do this? So we have where we sit down and we'll just do a complete business review. I ask them lots and lots of questions and they just tell me what's going on. And then what happens is they say, well, where is those sticking points? And what happened there is I had this very recently. I had a business owner who was feeling quite a lot of overwhelm. They were a very small team to begin with. And in fact, their team left to go and find alternative employment. So what happened was then that team was reduced quite down and they just couldn't cope with the amount of work that was needing doing. Now, I don't know about you, but I seem to be a lot busier than I was before. It's not always with paying clients, but and I think it's just as our businesses are morphing and changing, there's things that we need to do. So we sat down and the first thing we did was an operational review. Then I set up we had whiteboards around her room. I actually got her sitting in a different space in the office so that we could think differently. And we just, on the whiteboards, we set up what is your business now? Very high level, because this replaces the post-it pads and the paper. And, what projects do you have on go just now? What's your finances looking like? What are your costs? Again, very top level. And what resource do you have? And then we set up another board that basically said, okay, what suspects do you have? And my suspects, that's somebody that said, I really like what you're doing. Maybe we should talk. That's a suspect. It's not a lead. It's not a prospect. It's just a suspect. Yeah. Then prospects where it's been qualified going, okay, where you've decided I'm going to follow up on that. Then they had a discovery period and then they became a client or a supplier because they worked with both. And what happened was because she then had the two boards in front of her, not only did other people in the company, could they see what was going on, sort of as a picture, snapshot, it allowed her to move things around in her head and go, right, I need to move from that column to there. Oh, I've got those projects ongoing there. And the projects she could see straight away when they came in the suspects, did they fall? She went back to those anchors. We talked about those anchors. Does it fall into my main product, my core offering? Does it fall into the second offering I have? And she actually had 3 offerings. Does it fall into them? If it's not in those, I bin it. If I get to a certain point and it doesn't go any further forward, she's got another box called on the back burner so that perhaps she can pick it up later. And that was just a visual help for her. Yeah. But what it did was it reduced the overwhelm. It gave her a process to follow. It meant that she was making decisions from a place of information. And it meant also she wasn't getting in a right fankle with lots of information coming in. She was able to plan the work a little bit better, and she was able to then be much more effective. Yeah. So there was lots of takeaways in there for her, and it was brilliant to see that change in her, going from somebody that was like, I actually don't know what bit of paper to pick up first, to I now have a path going forward. And we're hopefully going to catch up again towards the end of next week, and I gave her some tasks to take away, actions to complete for next week, just to try and move things on. Yeah, a little bit of accountability is useful sometimes. It's accountability as well, and actually I know I'd work really well with that, and I find my clients do as well. If you say I'm coming back in 10 days, and for then can you do A, B and C, they might get A and B done, but if I hadn't said that, they wouldn't have got any of them done. So it's all about how do we get this business moving forward and progressing. And it doesn't have to be they've suddenly taken on a 20-30 grand contract. It can be that they've given their bookkeeping to the accountant who does their end of year accounts anyway, but they didn't think to give them the bookkeeping. It gets it off their desk.
Yeah.
Simple things.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. I think probably the only other question is, where can people find you if they want to find you following from this?
Ta-da!
There we are.
So that is my tagline for my business, Thinking Differently. LinkedIn is a great place. If you are having a look on LinkedIn and you find me, you will see exactly what I'm about, my thoughts, how I approach things. You'll also see all my experience. I'm pretty broad sector. I have a particular niche in the S and the M of SMEs. And I work a lot with micro businesses as well, which I mean sort of less than 5 people. And you can email me or you can give me a call. My details are there.
Well, brilliant. Thank you ever so much for taking the time out to come and talk to us today, Aileen. It's been really interesting.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and I hope it's been useful for members of the group to hear from somebody that isn't me for a change, to hear a different voice and to get a different perspective, which I think is really useful.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right then. Well, we'll say goodbye.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.